that will be where we start experimenting on how value moves virtually, when money becomes purely digital, and like all that data that is suddenly stuck to for instance payments. What can we do with that? That will enable new business model, new customer experiences. That's gonna be so exciting.
Special edition. Greetings from a very gray Copenhagen. But we've got a lot of very colorful content, and we're going to have Thomas and Mads with us. Gaurav is obviously, as usual, zooming in from sunny Dubai.
Yeah, you can send that weather back to us, Ronit. We're supposed to be expecting winter, my friend.
Winter meaning like 32 degrees centigrade or 28?
Ish.
Yeah, ish. I was going to walk to the Little Mermaid this morning, but it's raining, so I'm back in the hotel. So
I'm jealous. I'm jealous, brother. I'm jealous.
Let's talk about what we've learned in the last couple of days at Nordic Fintech Week. And first up, we've got Thomas, the founder, CEO of Nordic Copenhagen Fintech. Thomas, thank you so much for hosting us the last couple of days, and also hosting that great session this morning. What were your main takeaways from Nordic Fintech Week, Thomas? And what do you think was different? What was like the different feel this time around to say previous episodes you've done of this event?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And if I look a little bit tired, it's because I I actually am. After 3 days of conference here in Copenhagen and having like 1,500 people checking in every day. But it's been very uplifting, and I think this is the first in-person conference after COVID, right? So it's been really great to gather the primarily the Nordic fintech ecosystem, but we had people coming in from all the corners of the world. Of course, you flew in from Dubai. We had delegations from as far as Japan. So it's been really, really, really good. Yeah, we had 150, 160 speakers on 3 different stages discussing everything fintech, right? So it's been good. I would say the difference, of course, the obvious difference is that this time it was in person, and you could really feel that people have been building up a hunger for meeting in person. We've done 2 years of virtual conferences, and the Copenhagen Fintech Week, which now became the Nordic Fintech Week, have been from virtual to physical, and with a lot more. I think making it virtual meant that it was very much around knowledge sharing and pulling in trends from all over the world in this virtual environment, and making it in person meant that it changed a little bit. That was my feeling, at least, that it changed a little bit into like, and that's for the good of it, focusing on partnerships, concrete investments, and then of course the knowledge sharing and all the great sessions where you also participated, Ronit, and shared some of your insights. But we could, I've just talked to a couple of companies here in the lab in Copenhagen, and they all came home with some really concrete contacts and investment offers and potential partnerships that hopefully will materialize in the coming weeks and months, right? So I think it's also fair to say that we've seen a more mature ecosystem. COVID has done some. The current macro environment is also maturing some of the startups quite fast. We've been looking. We ran a research symposium with the Danish universities Monday, and I think what really got me excited was having some insights into what's going on the research side, especially in DLT and blockchain. There's really an amazing amount of research and potential startups coming up out on that side. So I would say that there's the Nordic fintech ecosystem is still going strong. Although, of course, there are challenges ahead, and we will talk about those later. But that I think that's my main takeaway here. And we're not even done. You know, we have a whole week. I'm going to one of the universities later today. We had a breakfast session this morning with you talking about the metaverse, right? So we are not done yet.
So obviously it's back in person, a lot more deal making or partnerships that you can do in person better than in Zoom.
Yeah.
There's a content, you said that some really emerging, sort of interesting emerging areas like DLT or blockchain, particularly on the research side. And one of those emerging areas that we talked about over breakfast today is obviously this 3D internet, the so-called metaverse that we've talked to, with you and Mads. So Mads was there yesterday at the event. We met up with him and we did some demos of his technology. And I think we got connected via the Copenhagen Fintech Hub. So I want to bring Mads into the conversation and tell us a little bit about Synergy XR. Who are you? What are you? Why should we care?
Yeah, so Synergy XR is both a company, but it's also a XR platform. It's a no-code platform for companies around the world to start building their own corporate side of the metaverse in closed, secure environments. Us as a team behind building this, that is, we are the former team of Unity Studios. So we were initiated by the Unity founders back in 2008, actually, back then, and called Unity Studios. And that gives us, over a decade of experience working with large organizations. So we had developing virtual experiences and augmented virtual reality for Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, Volkswagen in Germany, GlaxoSmithKline in London, Schneider Electric, and stuff like that. Large organizations all over the world have been, we have been building these experiences. But in 2018, we started building this Synergy XR platform, which was released in 2020. And it basically enables companies to start creating their own corporate metaverse in a closed, secure environment.
And Mads, you said you're a corporate focused, you're a B2B business. What are companies doing in the metaverse today or around now? What are they thinking about doing when they're talking to you? And looking ahead, where do you think you'll see the greatest adoption or interest amongst corporates? Because one of the questions that comes up often is, if this is just hype, hype spread by technology companies or specialists like yourselves, or kind of analysts and peddlers like me. I mean, is this just hype, or do you actually have clients who are interested in this stuff?
It's definitely not hype. Like I said, we've been working within this area for over a decade. And there's been already from companies all over the world been invested millions and millions in this area. And the need is only growing. And it is not only the tech companies that is investing in this. So basically it's just easily put, right? An extension of the internet as we know it today. And it will just become a lot bigger. And it will be a space that we, dive into as human beings. And I think many companies are starting to realize that and and we see a lot of different use cases, which we've done over the years. One of some of them that is really taking off now because it has taken, it has shown some really good outputs is within, training, onboarding, and educate new employees. We have been talking about, the whole future work for years, but the whole pandemic really, forced us to think differently and about this, and also think about our resources, the earth as well, and the whole climate is also having a huge impact. So how can we, work smarter? in the world, and these technologies just opens up for new opportunities to both save a lot of money, save a lot of downtime on employees, and make it possible to actually meet like we are there and like having meetings in physical meetings, but actually meet and collaborate in a virtual world where it really makes sense. So that's also why we see these educational use cases is growing so big right now, because global companies hire globally all over the world, and this new wave of working from anywhere is actually, you know, that's something that we see a demand for, both from people, but also for companies to actually operate in a more global environment. So being able to from your home or where you are and step into your corporate metaverse and meet with your colleagues around the world, and basically travel to different locations in a metaverse, and that just enables, you know, a very fast onboarding and very fast knowledge sharing. So, for example, we have as a case from Grundfos, the world's largest pump manufacturer. They do onboarding in our platform, where it's possible for them to they actually ship out headsets to new employees, and so from all over the world, and they step into their corporate metaverse. And in here, they start in a theory room where they get to know the products of Grundfos and how, you know, water is being pumped up from the groundwater, and the process of that water treatment before we get it clean water out in our taps. And that whole process is done in a virtual room, very visual virtual room, where they introduce to all the products. And then they can dive deep into, you know, the different facilities, like a water station facility, where they see exactly how it works. And the trainer, you know, he's based in Copenhagen, not far from where you guys are right now. And, you know, and then you can, through portals, jump into different places that, you know, these Grundfos employees, they would probably never, you know, be able to see these facilities in real life. They used to fly them in all over, and it could take up to half a year to a year to onboard a new guy, right? A new person. But now, you know, they can see all of it in just a couple of hours. They can travel to the factories in China or in Mexico. They can go out in the field in UK and see a valve there installation. They can go to customer sites in Dubai, in Burj Khalifa. They have actually Grundfos pumps in Burj Khalifa. They would be able to travel there just from their home in the VR headset and see the installation there and how, you know, it impacts the citizens of Dubai.
So it's interesting, because oftentimes we think about the metaverse as maybe for purely consumer companies or luxury goods companies, as brand extension or brand engagement, and almost as a sort of subset of the marketing budget. And here you're talking about how companies internally work, onboarding, training, learning. And I'm sure there are loads of other use cases we can come back to. But before I hand over to Gaurav, let's flip the question around, Mads, and say, what do we need to happen in the next few years for this metaverse to grow, be it the corporate metaverse or just in general? Like, where are we in that journey? What needs to happen, either in terms of better
so
devices, or what needs to happen?
But I actually think you're totally right, because there is many use cases within sales and marketing as well, and there's a huge opportunity in the future of, you know, selling goods and products in the metaverse, because it will feel like you're actually there and getting to know them and stuff like that, right? And that's also some of the use cases that is really growing now, like virtual showrooms and taking customers around. But I think what will happen from now is that, and that's also why we have built this, because that is, you know, what we saw back in 2018, this need for companies to get started. They need to, you know, implement these new technologies inside their own companies before they actually go out and start selling to customers and stakeholders. So they would need already to, you know, to onboard their whole organization into these technologies before they actually go out. If they can't get, the internal employees to use these technologies, they will definitely have a hard time getting the customers to do it as well. So start internally, build up, your own corporate metaverse, run tests in sales rooms as well, run tests on, what is the best impact on your customers, get customers in and, experiment a lot of this, because once the headset, the one, maybe Apple's headset's gonna make it like really different. So these technologies is not mainstream yet, right? So, but once it really takes off, then you are ready and you will have a grid of internal environments that you can open up and utilize from day one, instead of, wow, bang, now it's there. And then you have to start all over and get it into the budgets, and you will probably fall behind. So my recommendations is definitely, and that's also what we're seeing right now from the amount of leads that we get in every day, that is, the rise is, it's really growing. And I think this is the right approach. You shouldn't stop looking at the technology where it is today and say, all right, it's also a heavy headset, or how can we get the people over like 50 into this and stuff like that. Really don't look at those as hurdles to get reasons for not entering this, because it will change. The headsets will become smaller. AR and VR will become in one headset. All of this, it goes faster than you expect, because just implementing new technology in a large organization can take a year. It can take 2 years, basically. So, so don't believe that once it's there, then you can just start. No, it's going to take time to implement this. So get started now.
I'd love to hear more about your own company and the build process of the company, but let me get Gaurav into the conversation so you can ask those probing questions about the company.
I'll get into that in just a second. Very interesting conversation, Mads. Actually, you're talking about headsets. I'm actually well entrenched to a company that's doing AR, VR on a contact lens. So forget the headset. Yeah, let's get. So, but we'll talk about that another time. But in context of what we're talking about from the people we're engaging today on conversation, Thomas, I'd love to start with you, if you don't mind. I know, you're not sponsored by Strepsils, so it's going to be a tough one for you here to keep talking. But I'm gonna lean on you for 2 seconds. With the landscape as you see it right now, and I'm part of something called the MENA Fintech Association, which I sit on the board of. When you're trying to encourage conversations between regulators, investors, startups, creatives, and disruptors in the ecosystems, right? Yours is a very well-established region of setting the examples and tones for global successes. But in the time that you've been doing it, or from a trend spotting kind of view, are you seeing that it's getting tougher for genuine disruption to come into the market, given the current ecosystem, by means of access to capital, infrastructure, talent, no code systems, Is it getting tougher for genuine invention and disruption, which people can then hand on heart say, after 7 to 10 years, this is, an investment which venture capital is worthy of, even though the base of venture capital is 90% is out. So are you seeing it narrowing, or are you seeing it exploding? And why? If you can give us a review from your point of view.
That's a super good question. I think it's a little bit more mixed. I think what we have witnessed in the past, it is actually an explosion. I think if we look at the Nordic ecosystem, just in the time that we have existed since 2016, we've seen going for, and mind you, this, Denmark and the Nordics is Denmark's small country, Nordics a smaller region of 27, 28 million people, right? But if you actually zoom in and you look at the number of, if we take unicorns as some kind of measurement of success, right? And I'm not, that we can discuss, that's a whole nother podcast, but but as some kind of measurement of success, take a look at Klarna and iSettle, some of the ones we've seen here, TradeShift, Chainalysis, one of the first ones to move in our lab here in Copenhagen right now, 800, 900 people out of New York. Pleo, So if you look at the amounts of unicorns coming out of the Nordics, it's actually punching well above our weight. I think what some of them, so that explosion of companies and innovation, I expect to continue. And that's what we're seeing. Of course, we have companies that are struggling, especially in the current climate. But we also, and I mentioned that as part of the research symposium, we see new research being commercialized and coming out, and we still see, and as in Copenhagen Fintech, just facilitated one of the first specialized fintech VC funds in the Nordics, focusing on the Nordics and with a small allocation to the rest of Europe, right? And so there's a lot of stuff still happening here, and it's happening in an environment where it's some of the most digital countries in the world, some of the most innovative countries in the world. If you look at the countries and what the Nordics are known for, especially in sustainability, we've seen that also in the conference, right? So there's a lot of companies that are now focusing and zeroing in on the green transformation, that sustainability, whether it's ESG screening or the global development goals and some of that, and then combining that with financial technology and scaling that. So I think we see, and then there's a whole nother space, sorry, for also in the SMEs, because there's, especially in the Nordics, again, the SME space, highly reliant on digitalization and a digital infrastructure that we can provide. Open banking, one of the most advanced regions when it comes to open banking, that also have spurred a lot of different solutions within that. So I would say it's looking pretty, future is looking pretty bright here also from the Nordic perspective.
That's super interesting to look at, given the current manner in which companies can transport their technology and adoption curves have happened. I mean, I've been here long enough to understand that usually adoption curves for technology from a B2B2C point of view was 5 to 7 years before you saw critical mass of adoption. Today, it's 3 years, 2 years in certain circumstances, right? So it's super interesting to see where the competitive edge will come in, because companies from Latin America could be doing the same thing as companies in the Nordics. It's just going to be an evolving space, right? Because I believe learnings from Latin America will produce slightly different products and services, different flavors, and then it's going to be a question of who eats who. but it's interesting to hear that it's still very positive, that people are very strong even in this current climate. So that's very encouraging. And from a point of view of interaction, we've been in Zoom land and we're talking about metaverse so long, but there's clearly an appetite for people to meet in person. Is it a space where you think that, given the way that we react to today's pandemic situations, health crises, people are going to continue sort of maybe as very little interacting once in a while because it is pent up requirements for these interactions and they can do virtual, or you think it's still core for people to interact without, any avatars or avatars, as we say in Hindi? What do you think from that? What is your feeling?
I think, again, a bit more mixed, right? I think Mass is a good example of, Mass has some excellent use cases when it comes to this, right? In these like corporate training, recruitment, and some of this stuff, right? And of course that makes a tons of sense. Just coming home from spending a week in Singapore and a week in Japan for the first time since the world began to open up, and then I can just say it's, again, there's some things and in some regions where it just makes so much more sense to be in person. And we've had such great conversations now where we can sit down and speak around the table and talk about partnerships and how we can, which is so crucial for us as a small country and a small region, that we form these global connections and partnerships. And we've been trying to do that on Zoom, right? And we can do that to some extent, but to really get down to finalizing that, we also need to meet in person, right? So I think a lot can be done in the metaverse and helped by Mass, and there's a lot of use cases there. At the end of the day, it's also just really nice to do something in person, right?
Thanks for that, Thomas. I couldn't agree with you more, to be very honest with you. And on behalf of my co-host, who I know will not object, if you look at his handle on Twitter, it does say,
exactly.
on an A380. So I think on his behalf, I can say that both of us couldn't agree more. We're very happy to travel and meet people. And Mads, coming to you, and it's been a very interesting conversation. And metaverse and Web3 has been such a hot topic right now, but quite literally, there's still so much that people don't understand about it, because there is so much to absorb in what is, again, the use cases. So right now, I think, the listeners who will be watching this podcast, this replay or listening to this podcast, I'd love to try and remove some of that invisibility around some of the conversation and try and really put some color and context on things in some use cases for consumer and some of the clients that you're dealing with without naming names, right? So, obvious use cases are breaking monopolies. As we saw, the internet broke monopolies when it came to retail. It broke monopolies when it came to advertising, right? And even in the beginning, the technology that metaverse is based on and the technology that internet was based for was first used by all the illicit industries in the world. As is with any of the new technologies, we all know this is something that is a standard conversation. But moving away from those conversations to where we are today, tell me more about what we can see as a non-obvious use case apart from advertising or say breaking a monopoly in retail or branding that you can tell us about that somebody you're providing infrastructure today is using and saving money on the rails that you guys are doing as a no-code platform. Just from a one or two corporate examples and maybe some consumer examples, if you could, that'd be great.
Yeah, because I think, but there's really some amazing places that is already having a huge impact. Another thing that is quite interesting is within the healthcare system as well. That also will impact consumers in the later stage. But right now we're talking about hospitals because before if you go to hospital, get a like MR scan or a CT scan, then the 3D scan that you get out of that is today 3D printed. At least at some of the newer hospitals, they 3D print like a hip. And that hip you get out, and before they actually go into the surgery, they actually speak with other doctors about what they're going to do and how they plan to operate on this person. But it takes around 50 hours to do a 3D print of a hip. And in that time, the patient is in the hospital, and it's costing a lot of money to have patients in the hospitals. You need to get them out there. And also, there is there's a lot larger re-operations they have to do over and over because of failures in the surgeries. So without like technology like AR and VR, they actually can take these scans and within minutes get them into a platform and meet with surgeons around, not only in the hospital as they do today in a physical meeting, but they would actually be able to meet with like experts maybe from New York or Dubai and meet with these doctors and discuss how they can operate and stuff like that, and they could do it all within minutes after the scan is over. And that opens up for lots of opportunities as well, and for concerning the consumer, we can see in the future that you would be able to actually also have your own like healthcare room, maybe from scans and stuff like that. As you're getting older, of what happens, and X-ray photos and everything, you can basically gather that in your own personal environment over time as well. Another use case concerning consumers, that's our platform is being built. We have like this creators club as well.
Cool.
Yeah, for people that is passionate about the metaverse. So that is more consumer open, where they actually can sign up to the creators club and do play around with what's possible and stuff like that. And in here we actually seeing a lot of like so a classic photo album book for your family and stuff like that. So in here you can actually start dragging images and pictures and videos and create your own personal rooms from a vacation with your family. And now with the new iPhones and stuff like that, it's also possible to do scans, right? Scans of environments or objects or sculptures and stuff like that. And then you can bring that in.
Integrated
you
with HoloLens with a paint device from?
You can and you can drag it in there and create your own personal rooms, and then you can actually relive them again, and go in and remember and collect. If you're in maybe 20 years and you have, so you could see your small children and they grew up, but you can actually meet in those personal rooms and walk around in there, show them, go back in time and see all of this kind of.
You can't put a price tag on nostalgia. That's a good one, man.
Thanks.
And what about the B2B side of things? Because again, the listeners on our who tap into this information might be consuming it from a business point of view or might not be, but from a B2B case, I know the cloud exists, but I don't interact with it personally. I have a laptop, I have a phone, I'm interacting with these units personally, but I'm seeing the benefits, of course, with storage and everything else. What invisible parts of what you do are benefiting businesses or larger infrastructure projects? Can you talk about the B2B elements that you're doing that are the cost saving that we don't see as a day-to-day thing, but saving corporations millions or giving them opportunities to make millions?
Yeah, so basically it's minimizing. Our technology is basically the biggest earnings that they do is minimizing downtime on employees and machinery right now. That is.
Can you explain that a little bit more if you don't mind, please?
So for example, if you have a product line or a wind turbine, offshore wind turbine, or a product line in Mexico, and this may have some kind of failure, so it's not running, then you will, with this technology, enable a local employee to fix the machine by going in there. So let him scan the machine with his mobile phone. Within minutes, add it into a metaverse. You can join in that 3D model and help him out solving that problem. A product line, when they stand still, or if a wind turbine stands still, that usually costs a lot of money. The faster you can get that up and running, again, that's, you will save millions already in this one case. And the other thing is that you have a set of experts inside of your company, and you're limited to these experts that you actually today send out to maybe fix machinery. And that takes time for these experts to go out in the world. So again, if you have like this product line that is standing still, then you have to send a technician there with spare parts and to go and fix it. And that can easily take like 2 to 3 days before he's actually arrived and get that up and running again. And in that traveling time, he has a lot of downtime. He's not able to work or help other clients in that time period because that is downtime on people. And like I said before, also with the whole meeting area and knowledge sharing, it's just a lot. You could just do it a lot faster than you can today because you don't have to worry about travel time.
Are these ideas concepts right now, or are these?
No, it is happening right now. It's happening.
That's amazing.
Right, yes.
Because the difference between a lot of conversations that are being had right now is still very conceptual, whether it's B2B or B2C.
Yeah, I know, because it certainly is when you're talking
extremely conceptual, right? So it's refreshing to hear implementations are already taking place, and that just goes back to what I was talking about with you, Thomas, earlier on about the implementation times of technology, which usually used to be 5 to 7 years before they hit any value. It's now happening so much quicker. I mean, metaverse as a conversation is so young already, but perhaps with AI, cloud computing, and blockchain actually becoming a lot better in terms of how it's growing. It's just going to be interesting now to see, Mads, how much talent you can keep recruiting and training to keep building out these things for your corporate clients. But on that note, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. It's been thoroughly enjoyable. And Ronit, I'll hand back to you, sir.
Thanks, Gaurav. Maybe one last question before we sign off to Mads first and then Thomas. It's 2025 and we're having this conversation in 2025. Maybe we're doing it in the metaverse, Mads. I don't know. What surprised us? What was, what's something that's happened either for you, Mads, in the metaverse environment, or Thomas just in general in fintech or emerging technology? What's something that happened that you were like, didn't think that was going to happen in 2022, the average person listening to this podcast. So obviously now they'll be informed. So in 2025, they won't go, didn't expect that. So they're going to be ready.
They will definitely, in 5 years' time, the metaverse will be more or less mainstream. It will not be a thing that we discuss as we do today. It's just a thing that is there and a thing that you enter. So the whole way it will be also changed is that the whole as avatar systems as we see today will be more like appearance of our actually digital selves as we are as humans today. I think that's some of the changes that will really be there. So eliminating those gaps as Thomas also highlighted before, being at the physical meetings is important, and it certainly is, but we will making that bridge even smaller in just 5 years time, because our avatars will be our human beings as they are today. We are building it, there's been built-in cameras, settings. I've seen some very impressive movie clips from the Meta research labs that comes out once in a while, and it's impressive what you can do, eye tracking, everything you can, and that's what we need to really minimize those reasons for meeting physically. So that I think that gap will be smaller and smaller, and the reasons for traveling will become smaller and smaller, even though it's nice to go to traveling and stuff like that. But all of us knows that it's also a pain to sit in an airport. It's also a pain to sit in the flight seats and stuff like that. And once the technology is that good, then we will take those two up against each other and say, do I really want to spend 15 hours in an airplane to consider to going into a meeting and just meeting with this person? So we're going to choose this ourselves. It's not something that the tech company is coming then pushing all over us. No, we're going to come to a stage where it's why would I spend 15 hours in a plane and an
Mads, congratulations, you've just single-handedly killed our sponsorship conversation with Emirates.
He's obviously talking about SAS. I don't know. So
thanks.
I think
still some stuff, right, Thomas, that we got to do in person. Maybe the avatar of Gaurav and me will be misbehaving, but we have to do those partnership deals, and we have to look into people's eyes and shake hands and hug. We have to do that in person, right, Mads? Thomas?
I think so. Looking back at the conference here and maybe tying that a little bit into what we're talking about here also, I think one of the closing remarks, and we've been saying that for quite some time, but I think this was put in a very clear way that every company is eventually becoming a fintech company, or at least have a play in fintech, right? And one of our speakers, Andrea Cates, put it in a way where she put it on a slide and said, you either die a consumer goods company or live long enough to see yourself enter financial services, right? And I really like that one, because it put it so much on the spot that eventually, whether you're Starbucks, and there was you had the classic example of Starbucks holding so much money and also having a play in fintech, right? But I think that's one of the things we will see, that you will see so many different industries, companies, all of the sudden starting to realize, hey, I can bring my scale, my business model, whatever, and refine that with some of these different fintech solutions, right? And therefore every company will have an interest in plugging into the fintech ecosystem. And I think that's what really excited me about those 2 days, is that was very, very clear to everyone that came out that, okay, we need to step up. We need and we need to figure out, and that also ties into Mass and the metaverse. And when stuff get moved around, not only physically, but also virtually in the metaverse. And I think gaming is a fantastic use case for that. you know, when that will be where we start experimenting on how value moves virtually, when money becomes purely digital, and like all that data that is suddenly stuck to for instance payments, what can we do with that? That would enable new business model, new customer experiences. That's gonna be so exciting.
Ronit, I'm gonna make a prediction on this podcast with you, if I can hazard. And we won't get teleportation on the extreme side of, you know, what Mads is talking about, and on the other side, you know, we're gonna get everything that's happening in the space of interacting virtually. I think the space that's actually going to try and get the closest to join the two in some sort of compromise is haptic technology. And I think really haptic suits and haptic technology in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be the biggest long-term bet, whether it comes in-house from Apple or it comes from someone else like Mitsubishi or anybody that's doing it. I think that's where it's going to be very interesting, whether it's gaming, whether it's meeting, you know, whether it's shaking hands or doing surgery, or, you know, I think haptic hardware is going to be the next big conversation we're having on this podcast in the next 2 years. It's not going to be just metaverse.
It's going to be built in our clothes and stuff like that, no doubt. We're already seeing some of that is happening. So I totally agree.
I think on that note of future gazing from Gaurav, we're going to draw this to a close. Thank you, Thomas, for coming on and talking about how all companies are going to become fintech, or they're going to die as consumer. Mads for talking about how the metaverse will be second nature, and Gaurav obviously pushing some investment I don't know about, which he hasn't shared with me, by the way, dear listener.
Hey,
so
hey,
I'm not part of that seed round. So whatever it is,
I always share with you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.